They put money into McDonald's bags and gave them to the recruits when they came on campus.
Danny is a leader, an innovator, a builder.
It's a bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see if it pays off for him.
You are listening to The Review on the OSG Sports Podcasting Network.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to The Review. It's the Online Sports Guys College Football Podcast where we talk about things happening in the great, big, wide, wonderful world of college football. Due to a few conflicts, we were not able to make last week's show, but this week we got plenty to talk about. We are, in case you're wondering, the Online Sports Guys. That's where the OSG comes from. OSG J-Dub here, John Wilkerson here, OSG Phil here. OSG Nelson is currently fighting with a computer hard drive and will be unable to attend this week.
And the hard drive is winning.
Yes. To our knowledge, he hasn't broken anything yet, but we could be wrong. I guess we'll find out next week.
Yep. He's on that dreaded assignment.
Guys, a few things have happened while we were gone. Probably the one that's most interesting, a little close to J-Dub's heart here, and that's the situation at the University of Tennessee, where in the span of just a few days, they went from having an athletic director and a coach to having no coach and no athletic director, only to find a new athletic director, and now they're still looking for a coach.
What in the wide, wide world of sports is going on here?
It's just crazy in Knoxville. I mean, I just a month or so ago, being a Tennessee fan, I'm like, I have faith in Jeremy Pruitt. He's still playing with Butch Jones's recruits. Give him some time, blah, 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 blah. Then it turns out the NCAA recruiting violations come in. They fired him with cause and kicked him off to the curb. And then Phil Fulmer retired. And I'm like, wow, what is this Hurricane Knoxville that happened? I mean, it's like my beloved program is turned on its ear. But hopefully, we will end up somewhere north of decent, maybe, possibly in the next decade.
the Orange Hurricane that came through Knoxville and wiped out the legend of Phil Fulmer and I don't know what we call Jeremy Pruitt, but it's something that's probably can't be broadcastable.
Another failed Saban assistant.
Yeah, exactly. There you go. It's like Bill Belichick assistants in the NFL.
You got it. The thing about it, though, is, Jeremy Pruitt, is a great recruiter. He brought in good people, and now we know why he was a great recruiter, because he had all these grade 1 and grade 2 violations of NCAA recruiting policy. But, I got to hand it to.
We must say none of that has been proven yet at this time.
Allegedly, with his recruiting violations. But I mean, Dante Plowman said, she came out and said, we're going to hire a coach. Phil Fulmer said he'd stay until they hired the new AD. And in 3 days, they lured Danny White from UCF to come and be the athletic director at Tennessee. And I'm going to say low key, he's probably the best AD in the country.
I thought it was super hire by Tennessee. Probably the first thing they've gotten right in quite a while.
Well over a decade.
Yeah. So, and now the weight is on his shoulders to find a head coach. And the same cast of characters that we've talked about with other coaching opportunities, they're the same cast of characters that we see in Tennessee. I just don't see Greg Schiano's name in there, but that's a whole different can of worms. So, first of all, what I'm thinking is, where is the Tennessee job as far as attractiveness for somebody that is looking for a head coaching job or wants to move up or laterally move? Obviously, it's in the SEC, and that automatically makes it a marketable job, a marquee job. But the minutia you have to deal with at Tennessee
comes with fines.
Yeah, kind of binds things up a little bit. what I love about Tennessee is their fan base. Yeah, they can be a little crazy, but show me an SEC fan base that's not. But I've always had a soft spot for the Tennessee fan base, and that goes back to the '90s when I got exposed to it when Arkansas joined the SEC. And I just love the people that cheer Tennessee. I mean, they're rock solid, but so I've always had a soft spot for the Tennessee fan base. And then the fact that there's just not that many 5-star or 4 stars that Tennessee produces, the state of Tennessee produces. So now you've got to rely on Georgia, Florida, the surrounding states. Memphis doesn't really produce a whole lot. When they do, they usually go to Ole Miss or Alabama. Nashville, they don't really produce a whole lot, and they usually go to Alabama or a different school. So there's a lot of headaches involved when you're the head coach of Tennessee. Really, Phil Fulmer is the only one I can recall that has really handled it well and knew he's a Tennessee Vol to the core. I mean, he knows what has to be done. So again, I'm just curious about if you're looking for a job, where's Tennessee up in that pantheon?
Well, I will tell you this much: the fan base is craving consistency, craving a team that is competitive on an SEC level. And if you'd asked me 3 days ago how attractive this spot was, I'd say it was not attractive at all. Tennessee's had 4 athletic directors since 2011.
Yeah.
They've had, look at the coaches, Lane Kiffin, Derek Dooley, Butch Jones. Butch Jones is the longest tenured Tennessee coach in the last couple of decades at 5 years.
Yeah.
And then you look at, with Jeremy Pruitt, I would say that job is not worthy. Don't touch it with a 10-foot pole. But then you come in, you have Peyton Manning reaching out to David Cutcliffe at Duke saying, what type of AD should we hire at Tennessee? And he says someone like a Kevin White. Kevin White just retired at Duke, longtime athletic director, and is the father of Danny White. So you have Peyton Manning involved. You get Danny White in here. I say now this job is extremely attractive because you have Kevin Steele coming in from Auburn as defensive coordinator, acting head coach, right? Have T. Martin still on staff. Still, right. I think it is a very attractive position, but I will tell you this much. You mentioned the 5 stars. Think about the people that Tennessee has just lost to the transfer portal.
Right.
Henry To'oTo'o, Eric Gray, Quavarius Crouch, Wanye Morris. You just lost Jameer Johnson. So you've got 6 players. To'oTo'o is the defensive heart of that team that have just transferred out. So now you have very little stability on defense. You've got a quarterback. You have Jarrett Guarantano's gone. But, I mean, you've got pieces to build around. That's why Danny White took the job. That's why he's going to try to get a coach in there as a builder, someone that's willing to polish it up in the way it should be done. And that's why it's more attractive today than it was 3 days ago.
But you have 2 conflicting things going here. You've got the fan base that wants to see results, but you've got a decade plus of underachieving results that you've got to build from.
Absolutely.
And it's not going to happen overnight. And that's the question, and that's what you've got to figure out if you're looking for a coach. If you can find somebody who's willing to, A, build a program, and B, get the flack that goes along with not being able to win 10 games right out of the gate. And that's not going to happen.
No, and but going back to the Danny White coming to Tennessee, that's a great first step. Mm-hmm. And he's a guy that has the charisma to be able to win over the fan base for a little while, especially if Rick Barnes keeps winning it with men's basketball, because that'll help a little bit as well at Tennessee if they can have a nice NCAA tournament run. So there's some big positives that have come out of this huge negative for Tennessee, but it is incumbent on Danny White to hire that head coach. And again, you look at the list of candidates or whatever the media puts together, and it's the same cast of characters. It's really what's important on Danny White's list. And when you look at the hires that he had at Central Florida,
and before that
he's
at Buffalo.
He's
hired Lance Leopold.
Lance Leopold, yeah. He likes innovative type coaches. that have a sharp offensive mind and can really sell tickets. And I can see someone like that coming to Tennessee. And it wouldn't surprise me if he thought a little bit outside the box, similar to what Auburn did, bringing in Brian Harsin in, bringing somebody in from the outside that has a little bit, has a fresher approach and can lure some of those West Coast guys who seem to be very attractive to the SEC right now over to the SEC. I can see Danny White doing something like that, thinking a little bit outside the box and not being so intrinsic into the South as far as looking around.
Let me ask you both this, though. Do they get gun shy? Does a coach get gun shy when they know the history at Tennessee of trying to bring in somebody from outside the SEC, which brings us to the Greg Schiano experiment that blew up in everybody's face, and in hindsight would have probably been the best move they could have made. And does that scare away a potential candidate, or at least somebody with experience who's like, well, I'll wait for a better opportunity with more stability?
Well, absolutely. I mean, you're going to have trouble luring like a Hugh Freeze from Liberty or Matt Campbell from Iowa State into a situation like Knoxville, but you probably have an easier time getting Leopold from Buffalo or Josh Heupel, the current UCF coach, someone who is a little bit more trusting of Danny, who has a connection to Danny White, and a little bit, that innovative outside the box thinking. Now, I will tell you this much: the Tennessee fan base is not going to like a Josh Heupel hire. Tennessee fan base is not going to like a Lance Leopold hire. It's not sexy. It's not a big name. They're going to want a Jamie Chadwell, who is a Tennessee native, to be considered for the job. They're going to look at someone like a Hugh Freeze. That's what the fan base wants. So I think Danny White's got two problems on his hands right there. He needs to get a coach that's willing to be innovative and to build, and doesn't expect to be 10-1 his first year. But at the same time, that's what the Tennessee fan base is going to want. So now, granted, they're kicking themselves about Schiano. I was one of those ones that said, is he really the right hire? And I'm kicking myself. We should have gotten Jersey Strong anyway. But I think, a Matt Campbell to me is an intriguing pull that this job might lure him away from Iowa State.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a hard sell, though, to get Matt Campbell because of what he's accomplished in Ames and, what he's got coming back at Ames. Does he want the headache? I think Heupel and Chatwell would be my top two if I'm Danny White. And, obviously the familiarity with Josh Heupel. I think you're right, J-Dub. It would have to be really sold hard to the Tennessee fan base. But Chatwell, being from Tennessee, what I like about what he did at Coastal Carolina is he built, and JW and I have had many great conversations about our philosophy of football. And it starts with those five guys in the interior. And Chadwell feels the same way. That was the success of that Coastal Carolina team. Even though they're undersized, they were so fundamentally sound. And so they got leverage. The BYU game is a perfect example of that. So, he would be the top guy on my list if I'm Tennessee because of those things. He's also got some charisma to him. He would have to really open up when he comes to the SEC because let's face it, it's very media centric, and he would need to develop those skills, which that won't be an issue. But going back to the attractiveness of the job, guys, you got top of the line facilities. You got boosters that are willing to write some 7-8 figure checks if they have to. Fan base. Yeah, they're a little crazy, but like I said, what's an SEC fan base that's not? And you've got a wonderful setting. Seeing a game in Knoxville at Neyland Stadium is on my bucket list. Unfortunately, I haven't done it yet. So if anybody out there is listening or watching our program and would like to host me for a weekend to go to a game at Tennessee and maybe go to Calhoun's before the game, I'm all game.
I've got a few games there, and it is one of the cooler places to go to work a game right there alongside the river. I will say the stands, the bleachers aren't as comfortable as they probably could be, but I agree. Having that many people singing Rocky Top at the top of their lungs,
literally, there's very few things. The hype song walking out to Virginia Tech. There's some things that are equal, but yeah, that just is just an incredible feeling.
Picky.
But I will say this much, going back to the coaches. You said that Chadwell, top of your list. I'm actually going to come out and say potentially Lance Leopold is on top of mine. Leopold. That he took Buffalo to 3 consecutive bowl appearances, has really turned around a program that really had no one has ever heard of, and I think Leopold has got a track record. My look at someone like Heupel, he went 6-4 this year. That's not a real good record for him in a COVID shortened year. You look at Chadwell, is he ready for a Power 5 job? Right, he did the 1 year at Coastal. What are we? And I'm afraid that if he takes the Tennessee job, Chadwell, and is unsuccessful, has that hurt his coaching trajectory? So I worry about, that being a Chadwell. But then you look at someone like a PJ Fleck from Minnesota. That's an interesting name I've heard kicked around. Tony Elliott. There's some interesting names being thrown around there. I just don't know who's willing to take the job at Knoxville because it's cursed.
It is, and it goes back to what I was talking about before. Does all the stuff underneath make it worth it to an experienced coach who's got a good program already? And that's really the question to you, Wilkie, is if I'm a coach that's had some success like a Leopold at Buffalo, or even Heupel, who's had some moderate success at UCF, if I'm looking to move, do I wait for a better opportunity, or do I take this because it's there and the facilities are pristine?
Well, that's where the hiring of Danny White was huge, because he's going to have some juice in that building within the academics there and the higher ups at the University of Tennessee because of his dad and because of what he accomplished at UCF. Lance Leopold. J-Dub, I agree with you there too. I mean, he'd be in my top 3. Heupel was more of the familiarity. I get it with the fact that he kind of had a down year and a COVID year. But Leopold, you're right, took a upstate New York football program that is just nobody knows about even in Buffalo because the Bills are there. Yep. He's produced NFL talent. I mean, you think of some of the guys that have been drafted from the UB. Those are Lance Leopold guys. So on a pure football standpoint, I don't see any reason why Lance Leopold isn't in the top 3 and why he shouldn't get the gig at Tennessee. Now, Leopold. And I would think he would want it because of who the AD is and the fact that he's probably done everything he can do at Buffalo. And here's an opportunity to move on to the SEC, to the big time, and test what his philosophies are with an SEC school, a school that has a winning tradition, has a brand. That T means something, even wherever you are. So I would say, Lance Leopold, Jamie Chantwell. Josh Heupel, I would probably be the top 3. But again, that's our list. It's Danny White's list that matters. And these are guys that he knows. So it wouldn't shock me if they're in the top tier of his list.
Now, one name that I got kicked out before that, as we're talking, is kind of interesting to me because I was looking at online. There's several sites already kicking his name around, but Clemson offensive coordinator Tony Elliott.
Yeah, Tony Elliott. I'd like that.
I mean, I think that would be I think that's an outlier play because why would you leave Clemson, to run a program like Tennessee? At least our stuff's already orange, right? That's a plus.
Well, that's a different shade of orange.
Yeah. But I think Tony Elliott could be an interesting dark horse candidate just because of what he's done with Trevor Lawrence and Travis Etienne as offensive coordinator in Clemson. And maybe he's looking for a place to make his mark. And he's been at Clemson for a while, been learning under Dabo Swinney. That's interesting. I mean, just an interesting candidate. But I will say this, John Curry, who was, 2 athletic directors ago, he was at Wake Forest when I was at Wake Forest. So we were students, but we're contemporaries. And he was run out of town after what happened with, Butch Jones. And now he's actually AD at Wake Forest. Then Phil Fulmer came over, took the AD job. I think all of these ADs were not, I guess, outside worthy of people coming into the program. Danny White brings that top tier national. He was a national AD of the year in 2018 or 19.
Good point.
And so brings that stability to a program. Plus his contract has got all sorts of hundreds of thousands of dollars of incentives when he's already making like 1.8 million, which is double what Fulmer was making. But all these incentives if your teams do well. So I think you have someone like a Danny White. I think that hire alone makes this open for any coach that's out there looking to move a job. I think that that one hire is going to set Tennessee up for success.
Well, let me ask you guys both this. One thing that we haven't hit on through all this is we just kind of briefly touched over and mentioned it, the potential of an NCAA investigation and possible fines, possible probation, possible bowl ban, things like that, which is the reason why Tennessee used to try to walk away from Jeremy Pruitt's contract and not pay the $12 million that he's currently owed. Do you think that that's going to play into anybody's plans? Because the violations that are rumored to be happening right now include payouts to players and things like that, which are major violations and could end up costing the Volunteers quite heavily here over the next couple of years. And you're talking about a program that's already not in good shape. Could we be talking about taking a job only to find out your legs got pulled out from underneath you before you get started?
Well, the benefit to that position is it takes the pressure off. You see what I'm saying? It's like if we're under potential NCAA violations, I'm not going to be expected to be, champion of the SEC East the first year. So that actually might, because White himself says he doesn't see this crippling the university. So that wasn't a deterrent for him not taking this job at all. I think that will go a long way into bringing somebody else in there. But I think, to me, if I was a coach, I'd be like, okay, that takes the Power 5, SEC East Division Championship off the table the first year. So if I get it, it's great. But if not, I'm not going to be run out of town because of it. That's just my opinion.
I completely agree with you, J-Dub. That's it does take the pressure off. It wouldn't shock me if, as Tennessee kind of knows what's happening as the investigation continues, but on the NCAA level, some kind of self-imposing by Tennessee that perhaps satisfied the NCAA. I don't know what the hell satisfies them, but I can see that kind of scenario where the potential new head coach knows about it. And now he's got a couple of years he's playing with house money. He can build his recruits. Bowl bans mean nothing now. I mean, you actually lose money to go to those things. The only thing that really matters is probably the New Year's Six and the playoffs, where the really major payouts come out. But you're going to get all this money unless there's something with the TV money involved with the penalties. It's not going to mean much other than the fact that you get to play with house money for a couple of years and build your program. And then when you're off all the whatever probation or whatever self-imposing the university does, you can have your signature year. At least that's the plan. But I agree. I completely agree with you, J-Dub. I mean, I think it makes it even more attractive that somebody can come in and just for a couple of years, not have to look over your shoulder and see, whether they're going if this is the game they get pink slipped.
And that being said, since you have that playing with house money, so to speak, what's the chance of them just making Kevin Steele head coach? Since he's already interim, is there a chance at all he gets the head coach nod?
No way. I don't see that happening. I mean, it's not a realistic scenario at this point.
Depends on if he impressed Danny White, though. I mean, he's going to get a shot, and he does have a track record. And, I akin that to what Sam Pittman's doing at Arkansas. No one really thought of him as a head coach, but Hunter Yurachek did and gave him the shot, and you saw the end result.
Steele's got a track record, though, as a head coach.
That was at Baylor. That was a whole different situation at Baylor. I mean, you're talking about what? He replaced Grant Taft, as I recall, right?
Yes, he did.
Okay, so you follow the legend at Baylor, and at the time they were still in the Southwest Conference. Southwest Conference meant nothing. I mean, when Arkansas left, it tanked into oblivion, and he couldn't get players. And plus, Baylor at the time, the one private school just could not. I mean, it's hard school to get into.
It was before they sold their souls.
Yeah, it's just if you want to use that analogy. So look, the whole Baylor experience with Kevin Steele, that was 30 years ago, doesn't apply now. And he has done really well at the coordinator role. Maybe this is a shot. So I wouldn't bother me if he got the head job at Tennessee.
No. I mean, I still feel like he got screwed coming in from Auburn, and next thing you know, his head coach gets fired. Like, would he have left Auburn had he known this kind of crap was getting ready to hit the fan?
Well, I think that was after to refresh here a little bit. He was up for the Auburn head coaching job that ended up going to Brian Harsin because some of the alumni and boosters in Auburn had pushed him for that job. And when it didn't happen, he left, along with the rest of the administration of previous coach Gus Malzahn. He was fortunate enough to land at Tennessee before the doo-doo hit the fan, for lack of a better way to put it. I mean, I guess you could see if you're talking about having to be on probation or a bowl ban or whatever, which, by the way, what Wilkie said too before, bowl bans really mean nothing, and that nothing could exemplify that better than this year, where at least two teams with losing records volunteered to put themselves on a voluntary bowl ban. Oh, no, we're good. We'll look at us. We're going to put a voluntary bowl ban on our program this year. You weren't going to play in a bowl game anyway.
Yeah, for the casual or no football fan that finds this appalling, yeah, it looks good to them. But in reality, it means nothing. And you talk about the losing teams going to the bowl game. Hey, it was extra practices and an extra game. That's all it was.
Now, for the record, I do not think Danny White will give Kevin Steele the job. I think Danny White's going to want to make a splash here, but he's going to make a splash that is very calculated and very risk-free. He's going to make a big hire with Tennessee. I'm going to say before the middle of February, Tennessee will have a new coach. I'm going on the record saying by February, I was going to say February 15th, halfway through, Tennessee will have a new coach, and it will be someone that none of us have thought of. You watch.
Wilkie, question to you. Does that coach walk in with a handicap because we're already past the early recruiting season and National Signing Day is coming up on us really, really fast? Is that going to hurt recruiting?
Yeah, I'm afraid it will. Because if you don't have a head coach in place, and then what's Kevin Steele's role? If he's right now trying to keep that recruiting class intact, and he does, is that a feather in his hat as far as getting the head job? But I mean, if those guys scatter, and full disclosure, I'm not one of these guys that is on the computer every day looking at where the recruits are going. I'm just not a recruiting guy. But if not, I think it's really going to hurt them. And again, that plays in the J-Dub scenario of you got a couple of years of playing with house money. You may have a 1 in 10 year, but so be it. I mean, you're rebuilding something that's been torn down.
But you have to know Danny White is keeping that mind about the National Signing Day and recruiting. So, I think he's going to he's going to make the best decision for Tennessee in light of all their recruits. And I think that he's going to have people talking to all the recruits so far to keep them happy and not lose any more people to transfers or whatever. But I think that that's going to be front of mind for Danny. You can't be National AD of the Year and not have some control over some of these things as far as his thought process. So, but I think it's going to hurt Tennessee, but I don't think it'll cripple them either.
It's going to be interesting to see how the next couple of weeks play out, because not only would be plucking a coach from another school be a challenge for Tennessee, it would also hurt the school that loses their head coach this time of year. Guys, why don't we say we wrap up here talking Tennessee in the first half of the show. When we come back in the second half of the show, we're going to talk about the Pac-12, a conference without a commissioner, floundering, looking for a national identity. Can it be saved? That and more when we return for the second half of the review. You are listening to the review on the OSG Sports Podcasting Network.
The OSG app is up and running on your Android or iPhone. Install the OSG app and listen to our podcast from college football, soccer, and lacrosse. What are you waiting for? Download the OSG app today.
We know that every driver is different, and a one-size policy does not fit all. That's why Country Financial offers a variety of discounts, so you get the coverage you need and the savings you deserve. From good driver to good student, multi-policy to multi-car, we've got a discount to suit every driver. Call Jason Wright at 678-568-6871 today to see what you could save. On Facebook at Jason Wright Agency or by phone at 678-568-6871. Discounts vary by state. Policies issued by Country Mutual Insurance Company, Country Preferred Insurance Company, or Country Casualty Insurance Company, Bloomington, Illinois.
If you've been hurt in a car wreck, contact my friend Steve Apolinsky of Apolinsky & Associates. He's been representing individuals for over 30 years throughout Georgia and Alabama. Email him at steve@aa-legal.com or call him 24/7 at 404-377-9191. The initial consultation is free.
In what's being described as a mutual parting of the ways, Commissioner Larry Scott will resign in June.
Thanks for sticking around, folks. You've made it to the second half of the show. You should know by now you are listening to the review. It's the Online Sports Guys College Football Podcast featuring us, the Online Sports Guys. Don't forget, I got to do the obligatory social media plugs. You can find us on social media. We are there. Look up OSG Sports on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. You'll find us. We're there. You may not see our smiling faces, but you'll certainly see the logos. Wilkie, have you gotten out of Twitter jail yet?
Oh, no.
OSG Wilkie. Time for OSG Wilkie.
Yeah, I think that's got to be a new handle. When he starts back up, perhaps he will be OSG Wilkie. He is OSG J-Dub. I am OSG Phil. OSG Nelson, the fourth member of the band, is currently on assignment, unavailable, doing work, not college football related.
He's doing a solo album.
Yes, working on a solo project. Guys, in the first half of the show, we spent a lot of time talking about a program looking to rebuild itself, that being the Tennessee Volunteers. In the second half of the show, I want to talk about big news out of the Pac-12, a conference that has suffered tremendously in the era of Power 5 football. They're on the lookout for a new commissioner after deciding not to renew the contract of current commissioner Larry Scott. This is kind of a long open-ended question, but how the heck do you rebuild the marquee value of the Pac-12 conference?
Did it have marquee value?
At one time.
Well,
it was 14 years ago that USC was playing in the championship game against Texas in one of the best college football championship games ever.
Yeah,
a long time ago. You're right.
It was.
When I lived out in Washington State, watching the Apple Cup and some of those other games out there, and I was 20 some years ago. So,
in the Oregon
Ducks, was about 30 years ago when I lived out west, and the Pac-12 was top of mind. Of course, I was living in Arizona at the time when the Cactus Curtain was the top program, Arizona with Dick Tomey, in the Pac-12. So yeah, in those 30 years, and we're not even talking about football, men's basketball as well. I mean, it was a pretty formidable league, but right now it's. And
Phil, you bring up the Oregon Ducks. That was my one Independence Bowl victory over the Ducks when I was at Wake Forest, 1992. Woo-hoo.
They had some success under Chip Kelly. They made a national footprint for themselves and for the conference. They were they're the only Pac-12 team besides Washington to even sniff college football playoff, there's potential. There's athletes coming out of the West Coast, the California area, and up and down the coast all day long and coming it back east. Is the Pac-12 salvageable?
It all depends on who gets the top job. And you've got, it really depends on the direction what the college presidents want the Pac-12 to go too. I've always thought lately the Pac-12 is just so wanting to be the anti-SEC, and it's just not going to work. I mean, you need to, if you're going to be a viable conference in the era where television money is everything, and you don't know how long that television money is going to keep flowing in. And they're up for a contract, a TV contract right now, which we'll get into a little later. But I mean, look at Mario Cristobal, who's coming into Oregon, bringing that SEC mentality, and look at the end result at Oregon. He had a down year this year. They still were the Pac-12 champion. So I think
through a comment of scheduling errors, but
yeah, but they're the Pac-12 champion. So I think there needs to be a total philosophical change in the Pac-12. I think, especially in the political climate that's out in California and Oregon and Washington, I think it's going to be tough because of the college presidents involved. But again, cooler heads need to prevail, and somebody with a strong collegiate athletic background needs to take that post. I think the ACC did a great job with their hire to replace John Swofford. Pac-12 needs to do the same thing and not look at some professional league like Larry Scott came from with this new wave marketing thinking. It just didn't work. And
flat on its face.
Yeah, they need to find somebody who has collegiate administrative experience, especially on an athletic department, who knows what's profitable, who knows what works, and take that to the next level. And you look at the other college commissioners; they come from those type of backgrounds. There's some business and marketing background with them, but mainly it comes from the collegiate ranks. So if the Pac-12 can do that, I think they can be salvageable. It's going to be tough, though. It's going to be a tough 10 years, though.
And the Pac-12 is making money. I mean, in 2018-19, they made like almost $535 million, which is on par with like the ACC. But you look at a team like a conference like the SEC and the Big Ten, it's like almost $300 million more than what the Pac-12 made. So they have a situation where they can make money, but if they want to be as relevant as the Big Ten and the ACC, they have a lot of work to do. And I agree with you, Wilkie, about the person coming in to lead the conference needs to have collegiate background. If it were me picking someone, I go with Oliver Luck. NCAA current vice president, he's Andrew Luck's father at Stanford.
He may be overqualified for that job.
But I think if you want, but you almost have to have somebody like that to to resurrect the Pac-12. I think Oliver Luck would be a fantastic person to come in and take over the conference and do the things that Larry Scott just didn't know how to do.
Yeah, it was interesting. I read a couple of different articles about Scott when the axe fell. I didn't realize that when they moved the Pac-12 offices to San Francisco and increased their cost tenfold. Oh yeah. Along with his inflated pay scale,
highest paid commissioner.
They basically tried to make themselves into a broadcast sales hub.
Mm-hmm.
They were trying, and it's just fascinating to me that they thought that would work.
Well, it worked for him when he was running the Women's Tennis Association, where you had everything under one umbrella, where you're doing the sales and marketing for your television product and for your organization. And yeah, he tried to do that with the Pac-12, and you got satisfied 12 different college presidents and athletic directors who each have different missions and goals. It just was a marriage made in hell. coupled with the fact that he's the highest paid commissioner in college athletics.
Yep.
And come on, Greg Sankey, John Swafford, and Bob Bowlesby are worth 10 times more than Larry Scott, especially after this year. Greg Sankey, to me, the fact that he doesn't make that kind of money and Larry Scott did there's something wrong with that. I think their offices is right close by, like a block away from the AT&T field in San Francisco, which is pretty pricey real estate. He just made so many wrong moves. And the fact that the league in the highest profile sport has just keep disappearing. And the fact that men's basketball, this was a really good basketball league, and it is just tanked. And I mean, was it 2 years ago where there was a question, maybe it's 3 years ago, whether there was going to get a representative other than the conference champion into the NCAA tournament. I know they build themselves a conference of champions, and great. They can win at water polo. They can win at track or pick your non-rev sport. But and the ones that count, they were just plummeting. And the fact that the Pac-12 network couldn't make money, couldn't get distribution, that's another thing.
Mm-hmm.
But you look at the TV markets they serve: LA, San Francisco, Seattle, Salt Lake City, Vegas is now moving up in that ladder. Phoenix is very attractive for something like that. They just missed the boat. And I think a lot of that has to go with Larry Scott. Now, the reason why he's leaving is because they got to negotiate a new TV contract, because that 12-year monstrosity they had is one of the reasons why they were anchored with not making a whole lot of money. Yep. And they didn't want him anywhere near that. So that is the first thing first order of business for the new commissioner that's coming in, is to improve the numbers for a television contract. I think it's going to be a very hard sell.
And what ended up happening with that revenue-based service, what the Pac-12 Insider? Did that ever pan out? Did anything ever happen from that?
No.
There was something it was supposed to be on like Redbox and some other like live streaming things, something like a pay-per-view system. I mean, I heard it was like announced last year, but I mean, it's like the Pac-12. Everyone else ignored it.
Yeah, because I'd never even heard of it until you just brought it up.
That goes to show
I've heard of it, but it's just not top of mind.
That just goes to show you how just a horrific train wreck of a conference the Pac-12 has been. And I agree with Wilkie. I think James Phillips is an awesome hire for the ACC coming out of Northwestern. And the Pac-12 needs to have someone like that to take it over. Otherwise, it's going to be continuation of the same old.
Because at the end of the day, the game in college football and college athletics really is how much money do you have? It's become a big business. It's become a controlled business in that a lot of it's controlled by what Wilkie was talking about, the TV money. Yep. But
well, here's the thing that gets me about the Pac-12, because, JW brought up, or maybe it was you, Phil, brought up the USC Texas national championship game. Okay, think of that period for Southern Cal. They owned LA. The Rams and Raiders had left. Yep. I never thought I would say this, but at the time, LA was a college football town. So you had them. Even when the Rams and Chargers coming in, USC football was still king on the block. Yep. And now that's even kind of melted away. And I think Larry Scott has some blame in that as well, because he didn't keep the Pac-12, keep their profile on a high plane with the SECs and the Big Tens. So again, missed opportunity, especially with the number 2 TV market that turned into a college football town. You wonder if, for the new guy coming in, how long is it going to take? I give it 10 years. It's going to be 10 years before, because you're dealing with different fan bases
and changing habits.
Changing habits, exactly. But you're dealing with, in LA, there's other things to do besides going to a USC basketball game or a UCLA football game. Same in San Francisco. I just don't think up in the Bay Area, college athletics. Stanford and Cal are more known for their academics than they are for their athletics in that part.
But Stanford's had some success in football and in basketball.
They have. I just don't know if it resonates in a professional city like San Francisco that has different tastes. I look at Tucson, Arizona as a great college town. I look at Boulder, Colorado as another great college town.
Oh gosh, yes.
Eugene and Corvallis. That's really where, I've always said Arizona football fans are SEC type football fans. And JW, you were in Pullman around that area. How that area is. Seattle, they love the Huskies as much as they love the Seahawks.
But there's a lot of other things to do there.
Right. But UW athletics has always been top of mind there, at least in my experience when I lived out west. So there's some massaging that needs to happen for the new guy to get the Pac-12 top of mind nationally. Obviously, the time zone hurts, but and maybe not playing 9 a.m. football games is the part.
But they've had success. They've had success despite the time zone difference in the past. It's not like they've not been successful at some point in time over the last 50 years, because they have.
It's an excuse. I agree.
Yeah. But you look at the fact you just mentioned all the great cities out west. It's got great weather. You have just academically strong. You think of Stanford, UW. You think of all these schools that are academically just really, really high level. But they've been 16 years without a football national champion, 24 years without a basketball national champion. So you have all of these things that are positives in the Pac-12, but as far as the actual competing of the schools, there may be success, but on a national level, they're just not seeing it.
Well, you're talking about national champions in the Pac-12 and how long it's been. There were some great coaches in that league, football, Pete Carroll, Terry Donahue, mentioned Dick Tomey.
Got to talk about Harbaugh.
Yeah. David Shaw and
Herm Edwards.
That's about all I can think of that are top of mind that people would recognize in the Pac-12. Men's basketball. The only one I can
Bobby
think
Hurley
of.
now.
Well, Bobby Hurley over at for ACC guys, that's a no-brainer. But the guy. Well, I was going to say the dude at Arizona. Now his name's just blanked me.
Mick Cronin's trying to rebuild.
Mick Cronin,
it's
somewhat of a name, but the coaching talent has really kind of subdued in the Pac-12, and they're just not top of mind guys that are going to attract these big recruits, even in the West Coast. So there's a lot of challenges for the next guy, but they had to do something. Larry Scott had to go.
Yeah, and it's not like there's not talent there. There is. There's some of the best basketball players in the country come out of Los Angeles. Same thing for football. There are tons of kids that are come out of there that are top 10 quarterbacks in places like Los Angeles and the suburbs around the city.
Yep.
And now they're coming to the west or the East Coast. I can't think of the name of the kid that John's been talking about for the last few weeks who moved himself
to Georgia
all the way across the country to play his senior year of high school in Georgia so he could go to an East Coast school.
Yeah. Well, I know this is a college football show, and we're talking about the Pac-12. We talked about men's basketball and football. What alarms me is Pac-12 baseball was top of line when I played back in the 80s.
Yep.
And who's been the top? Arizona State have been pretty good, but they haven't really done much in the regionals. And that to me alarms me because they, obviously the SEC and the ACC have really stepped it up in college baseball. And even the Sun Belt has done really well in college baseball. Where's the Pac-12 been? I haven't seen them much in the regionals advancing into the supers and into the College World Series. Usually in the College World Series, you almost had a West Coast Pac-12 team competing for the national championship. And I just haven't seen that at least for 10, 15 years. And that to me is alarming if you're a Pac-12 guy.
But I think I can also tie in this topic to our topic in the first block in Tennessee. I think hiring a good conference commissioner will make these positions even more, I guess, desirable for coaches outside. Like you get somebody like a Greg Byrne, right, from Ohio State. Alabama. You got Gene Smith from Ohio State, and then you've got someone like a Bernard Muir who's at Stanford now. You need to get somebody to hire them that knows the Pac-12, knows the area, knows the geography, familiar with the history of the conference to be able to turn it back on its ear. You got to have somebody to lead that knows the Pac-12. That's why Larry Scott was a horrible hire, in my opinion. He had none of that history in him. And you need somebody that knows this conference, knows what its strengths and minuses are, and can pull it up. I think you have to have that. And I think that one hire, just like Tennessee, that one hire will make the conference more attractive to get coaches and recruits in once they know that this is going to be a stable conference. Right now, this is not stable at all.
No. And I'm interested to see, once they get a new guy in, what kind of TV contracts will be presented by the networks to the Pac-12. We all know one won't be in play. That's NBCSN. They're shutting their doors at the end of this year. So who's going to be stepping up that wants the Pac-12?
That program is just getting redistributed to other NBC properties, of which there are a ton of. So the programming windows are there. And you're talking about a war where the SEC just got, what was it, $300 million or
from ESPN,
from ESPN, something like that.
ABC.
Yeah. So there is money there. It's just a matter of somebody wanting to take a little bit of a flyer on a conference that struggled for the last 10 to 15 years.
Yeah, because I've actually spent some time watching Pac-12 network stuff because I have it's in my streaming platform, and just every once in a while I'll watch a game or watch a show, and it's got good content. It's just that the producers and the reporters and the hosts that are doing it are doing good work. It's just there's nothing to celebrate right now in that conference. And if I wasn't bored, just quarantine bored and flipping around and stopping on it, I wouldn't actually seek them out.
But they clearly overvalued themselves if they're not on the major cable systems and they're not on the major TV properties that provide content on the West Coast. Then you missed out on an opportunity there, because look at what the SEC network does for the SEC, and the same with the ACC network and the Big Ten network. Yeah. They're all successful marketing arms of their respective conferences, and ESPN and or Fox Sports took care of did all the legwork for them, got all the clearances, got all the money. You take that money, marketing rights, you get $1 per subscriber for your programming, and suddenly that property goes from being an okay investment to being a really lucrative one.
And the three of us have been around television for quite a while. And you look at an arm like the ACC network, the Big Ten network, the SEC network. I mean, that philosophy, their framework is rock solid. I mean, it's built upon, they're going after the right dollars. They're doing the things they need to do in upkeep and putting out good content. My question is this: did the Pac-12 fail in that regards because they overvalued themselves, or was it also a combination of the fact that their athletic teams are subpar and not on the same par as like an ACC, a Big Ten, or a SEC?
A little of both.
Well, I don't think it's an overvalue issue as it was a distribution issue. The fact that the Pac-12 felt like they could handle it all themselves. And then it became a distribution issue because they weren't getting the distribution they thought they were going to get from the cable carriers because they didn't see the value in it. Or the fact that they didn't have any skin in the game, and they didn't have a parent company that was backing the project. And I think that combination of a little bit of an arrogance on the Pac-12's part is really it starts with the commissioner, right? I think that's what kind of did in any kind of Pac-12 network, and nobody was interested after that. It just kind of did the best it could with what revenue it could generate. But the value with the Pac-12 with the network with networks that are going to be negotiating for the media rights is the TV markets that the Pac-12 has, and there's some very attractive ones. And the other values are Southern Cal football, UCLA basketball, and both those brands have really kind of tarnished in the last few years, especially UCLA basketball. Really, you could say on a good year, Oregon is probably as attractive to Oregon football is attractive to a TV network as much as USC football is, but USC football has just been so good for so long and it's such a brand that I think it can withstand some of the downturn that's been going on. So there's some good valuable pieces there. It's just, okay, who's willing to write the large check? Off the top of mind, I can think of CBS simply because they're losing the SEC, and they don't want to really rely on the Mountain West as their only TV college football partner. So you think CBS might be a willing player, and especially giving them a little more on the CBS Sports Network. But again, I guess negotiations start this fall or this spring. Who's willing to write the checks? That's really what it's all about.
It's a good jumping off point here, guys. We've talked for almost an hour and kept it to pretty much 2 subjects, which is good for us. I think we'll go ahead and wrap things up here. There's been 2 really interesting topics, and both topics that we could have talked about for quite a lot longer had we the time. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. As we've said, this is the OSG Sports Podcasting Network. We are the online sports guys. We're talking college football on the review. Till we meet again next week, everybody, have a good week. Enjoy yourselves, and we will talk to you again soon. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to The Review. You can find this and past shows by downloading the OSG Sports app on your mobile device. And enjoy all of our shows from the OSG Sports Podcasting Network. The OSG Sports app is up and running. Download it today.